What's up, guys? Welcome back to Red and Gold. Today I am joined by a very special guest once again, Ben Meyerson from FSU. I'm just messing with you. How are you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing well. The 49ers are back playing football this week, so that's good. No more bye week. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, man. It's cooling off here in Florida. It's not absurdly hot anymore, so that's a plus. But yeah, I'm excited to talk 49ers.
Yep. Well, this last week was the bye week, so with no Niners football, it's kind of like, what am I gonna do on Sundays?
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? Like watch the Rams? Like, it's just sad.
Well, hey, I got fantasy teams to worry about, so I got plenty to worry about for football Sunday, and I'm as engaged as ever, so no worries about that on my end.
Shardal's
Oh yeah, Shardal. Shout out to Shardal.
Well, he likes your fan cave, Ben.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I got Joe Montana and George Kittle right there.
Yep. Well, let's jump right into it. If you haven't already, there was some news it came out today before the stream, like an hour or two before the stream. Deforest Buckner was willing to take a pay cut. He was willing to take a pay cut. He was willing to meet the 49ers halfway. And the 49ers still traded him. What's your reaction when you heard this news and the comments that he said about the Niners?
Yeah, I'm not super surprised by what he said from the 49ers. Most of the stuff we've heard already has been reported that he was willing to kind of meet them in the middle in terms of the money, but that really the 49ers weren't going to budge much on that number that they were sitting on and that how much they wanted to pay him. And yeah, I thought, maybe we would learn something more today because obviously Buckner was doing media with the Bay Area media. We'd get some sort of different insight or something like that, but it seems to be the same story that he's always told. His agent has always told him, the media's always told us, which is that he went to the 49ers, told them how much he wanted. They said, they wanted to pay him not that much. and they told him, look, if you can go get that money you want, go and get us a first round pick and we'll make it happen. And I think, 49ers maybe weren't expecting him to do that, but he did it and they followed through. So, look, I don't think the Buckner trade is bad in a vacuum. And the idea that, trading a player like that who you have to pay a big contract for, getting a first round pick, that's valuable to me. That's smart. That's smart dealings from an organization. But what isn't smart to me is trying to replace him one-to-one with a player at the same position and putting all that pressure on that guy. And the 49ers trying to recreate what they already had because you had it already. You could have just kept it potentially, right, instead of shipping him off. And, I know there's also a lot of people talking about the Armstead part of this and the Jimmy Ward part of this and who would they be able to pay when. I think they wouldn't have been able to bring back Armstead for sure, obviously. But Jimmy Ward, that's the big piece to me, that they just wouldn't have been able to bring him back if they also re-signed Deforest Buckner. And it's just how it works out in the NFL sometimes. So I think you have to give the 49ers credit for being willing to deal a player, that caliber of player, when you really don't want to, right? But because of the situation you're in with the cap, you just got to make it happen sometimes. And yeah, I don't fault them for trading Deforest Buckner for the 13th or 14th overall pick. What I fault them for is using that to select Javon Kinlaw and trying to replace Buckner. I think that was always a mistake because, like we've seen with the 49ers, their ability to get guys on the defensive line almost in any round is like they could do it. They can get guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, like DJ Jones, Contavious Street. There's a bunch of guys on this team, right, who they've gotten in later parts of the draft. So Look, is it suck? Yeah, it sucks. Is DeForest Buckner should be a 49er. It'd be awesome if 49ers still had him. It'd be awesome if they could all make the money work. And I know a lot of 49ers fans wish he were here, but unfortunately that's just not how the cookie crumbles all the time in the NFL. And I think with this situation, 49ers had to choose. And I don't even think they made the wrong decision by going away from Buckner, because it, you know, down the line, you can only pay so many players to be the best at their position. And the 49ers, like we're looking at their team right now, have the highest paid left tackle, fullback, tight end. You go down the list, they're highest paid in the league at a lot of positions. So for them to add another position on top of that with Buckner, I just don't think it would have been realistic for this team's long-term outlook. And they had to make a certain choice, and this is just the choice they made. And I think even if they had kept Buckner and gone the other direction, they would have been fine, right? But I don't think they made the wrong decision at all by letting go of Buckner, just because of the circumstances they were under.
I mean, I would love to have Buckner on his team still, right? Because we already know what Buckner does. Buckner is like top. You could argue top 2, top 3 in this position behind Aaron Donald. I would put him second over Chris Jones, but we could argue that. But DeForest Buckner is top 2 in his position. Now, my 2 biggest problems about letting go DeForest Buckner was, number one, we drafted Kinlaw, and Kinlaw isn't living up to what Buckner was. So obviously, nobody. I didn't expect him to live up to what Buckner was, right? But there were so many other guys that you could have gotten, like Ekim said. You could have gotten Wirfs over Kinlaw. You could have gotten so many other guys over Kinlaw, but instead you draft Kinlaw to replace the position, which, if it worked out well and Kinlaw was a baller and he didn't get injured and he was really impactful, he was like a Nick Bosa impactful type first rounder, then yeah, I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be like upset at it. But since he isn't, he has an injury history. It's kind of like, what Buckner got us, Kinlaw doesn't bring that to the table. So, and also my other issue is, you paid Eric Armstead after that, right? Majority of Niners fans, our biggest fans, we paid Eric Armstead after that. Eric Armstead's getting paid like $85 million. Like, he doesn't live up to that contract. He hasn't lived up to that contract. So
Yeah.
I would have met DeForest Buckner halfway, especially considering that the Niners aren't good at drafting. They're not good at drafting, especially for a second round. They're not. The only guy that I could confidently say that they've hit on is Nick Bosa. That's the only guy that I could confidently say, yo, you hit on Nick Bosa. He's still balling out this season. But Mike McGlinchey, pass blocking, he's really not that good. Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, like, you're not that great at drafting first rounders. I would have just met DeForest Buckner halfway. I would rather have DeForest Buckner and kept him over. Like, I wouldn't mind letting go Jimmy Ward. I love Jimmy Ward. I'm not against Jimmy Ward, but I would have kept Buckner if that meant letting go of Jimmy Ward. But my 2 biggest issues, like I said, is that we drafted Javon Kinlaw, who's not living up to the hype, which I never expected him to live up to the hype. And then also you paid
Right.
Eric Armstead $85 million, right? So, like, if you didn't pay Eric Armstead $85 million, then I would be a little bit, I wouldn't be as mad, or as like, why would you do that? But since you did pay Eric Armstead, it's like, you could have paid that money to Buckner, and he would have actually had a huge impact on this team. Where Eric Armstead, you paid him all that money, he necessarily doesn't have as big of an impact as Buckner does. So.
Well, and if you look at the cap numbers, right, Armstead and Buckner, it's similar, but it's actually a little misleading, because really with Armstead, the 49ers aren't going to be paying him all that money that he's quote unquote due to make. With the way they've structured his contract with his years and his deal with the outs he has, they're going to be extending him down the line for a few years and essentially stretching out that contract. So the great part with Armstead is they don't really have to pay him as much as Buckner. But I understand how, it looks very similar. It's easy to be caught up in the idea that, hey, you could just replace them one-to-one. But I think that's the problem. I mean, is that 49ers couldn't just swap out Buckner for Armstead, right? That just wasn't possible with the salary cap restrictions. And I think with Buckner's situation in specific, I just don't know how willing the 49ers were to commit to someone like that when you have to pay him so much down the line, right? When you have guys like Nick Bosa coming up, D Ford you're already paying, I think when you're paying your defensive line so much already, right, adding Buckner, who would at least be 17, 18 million APY, if you're going to give him less than he got with the Colts, right, which is supposedly what he was willing to do, even then, that's a really expensive contract number. And that's a lot of resources allocated to just one specific position. And then I think, the thing that people aren't getting here, right, is that with Armstead, you could sign Armstead and Ward, right? But because you sign Armstead and Ward that offseason, it also allows you to extend guys and get more leniency on, guys guys like your D Fords of the world, your Fred Warners of the world, your Jimmy Wards of the world, people that you might want to extend down the line, people you might want to give money to on that defense. I just don't think you can put all your eggs in that one basket. And listen, if the 49ers are going to commit to Nick Bosa and then build the rest of the defensive line, I think this is a great strategy. But they have to be willing to do that. And if they are in the future, they're going to keep Bosa, they're going to sign him, do all the things that they need to do, and not trade him. I like this idea, but if they're just going to end up trading Bosa in a few years, well, why do you trade Buckner in the first place, right? You already had that kind of key piece and heart of a defense. And I understand Buckner isn't an easy player to let go of. I get it. Trust me. But I really think that they made the right decision here by getting more players rather than just getting Deforest Buckner. Because I think the spot the 49ers were in, they weren't just going to lose Armstead and Jimmy Ward. They were going to lose a few others too. It just wouldn't be those one guy, and you would have consequences down the line. So listen, they were in a really tough predicament. I don't think either option was right or wrong. It's just how you want a team build. And this is the way the 49ers are going now. So,
yeah, well, for me, the way I look at it is obviously Buckner's top three. I said like Buckner's top three, top two in his position. So like paying a guy that much who's like top in his like a high elite player in that position, I wouldn't be against paying Buckner because I know what Buckner brings to the table. That's why I'm like I'm not against it. And like if we do trade Bosa, then I'll be like, yo, I'll be even more pissed. I'm like, then why would you get rid of Buckner? But still,
right.
Buckner, what I know he brings to the table, he's good at run defense and he can get pressure to the quarterback. I mean, with Buckner, I know he's top two, top three at his position, so I necessarily wouldn't be against paying Buckner. Where Jimmy Ward and even Armstead, those guys necessarily, Jimmy Ward you could have a case for, but Armstead isn't top 10 in his position whatsoever. I can name you 10 guys, defensive linemen that are better than Eric Armstead. So,
Yeah, and for me, it's more just like it's not even that really. For me, it's I don't care if Buckner is a top, three sort of player at his position. My problem is that you're paying a defensive tackle that much money. If he was a Nick Bosa edge type player who could have that kind of impact on a game, then great. But I just wasn't convinced that you were getting that kind of value out of Buckner, even as great as he is. So I really think unless you got your Nick Bosa's of the world, you have a great corner like a Jalen Ramsey or a great tackle, right? Those are the positions I want to pay. I don't want to play guard or pay guard. I don't want to pay defensive interior. I don't want to pay off ball linebacker, at least to a certain extent. I mean, Fred Warner is a different example, and he's not your typical off ball linebacker. But I just there are certain positions I value over others. And you would think that's how the 49ers are thinking based on how they chose to let go of Buckner. But then they go around and turn around and give that money to Armstead and immediately draft Kinlaw. So they clearly valued the position, but they didn't value Buckner, which is the part that I don't understand. And that's where I just think there's some inconsistency.
Buckner did say he took that personally, a little bit personally. So, like, I mean, that's probably one of those reasons why he took it personally.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, moving on to a hot topic, majority, you look at everybody, Niners people's channel, they talk about this all the time. Which quarterback should start moving forward? In your opinion, for the rest of the season, which quarterback should start moving forward?
I mean, I think it should be Trey Lance as long as he's healthy. And that seems to be the problem right now is we don't know if he's healthy. In fact, we don't know if he's practicing today. Hopefully we'll find out here very soon. But it should be Trey Lance. I think it's pretty simple to me. We've discussed it at length. Trey Lance is the young guy. You want to get him that experience.
Lance missed the practice. Just FYI, Lance missed the practice, and Javon Kinlaw's knee is also a big concern.
Ooh,
I don't think it's a big concern, at least from what I heard. So I don't think he practiced either, and so did Lance. He didn't practice either.
Well, and with Lance not practicing today, that's bad news for game day. And that
Mhm.
probably rules him out for this game, unless we were going to make some miraculous comeback. But you got to start Lance moving forward as long as he's fully available. And not only that, but this team needs to establish an offensive identity. And that's the problem with the 49ers have right now is they have no offensive identity. So I think what they need to do is stick with a quarterback, choose him, and just be patient with it for the rest of the season. And, if it's going to be Jimmy for the rest of the season, it's going to be Jimmy, right? It's going to be Trey. It's going to be Trey, but don't go back and forth between the two and teeter totter, right? And just kind of walk the line where you're in between both quarterbacks. And hey, Trey's looking really good in practice, and then Jimmy's coming back. Like there shouldn't be any of that. It should be very bluntly clear who the starting quarterback is right now, and it isn't. And that's the problem I have with some of the stuff that's been going on in the organization recently is that they've had such mixed messaging that you really question who wants who to be the starting quarterback and who's in whose camp. And that's the kind of thing we didn't want going into the season. And that's just where we are now, unfortunately. So I think no matter what, you got to commit to one guy and you just got to stick with it no matter what moving forward. And yeah, you just gotta stick with it because I think, you keep going back and forth. You kind of keep, like I said, walking the line. It's just going to create more and more division in your locker room, more than there already has been, which I feel like, that's to me is what's been wrong with the 49ers all season is that they're going in two different directions as an organization right now. One direction of the organization is trying to win in 2021. This year, you have to win this year. You have to get to the playoffs this year. You have to accomplish all these things, get to at least 10 wins, right? I don't care about that because the other part of the organization is the future in Trey Lance and maximizing his potential as a quarterback. Because for the 49ers, if they're going to win a Super Bowl, it's going to be with Trey Lance, right? So you got to maximize what you can out of him and get him playing early just so that, even for the fact that you want to get his confidence going so that by the time he is playing next year, hopefully he has a playoff game under his belt and he has really valuable experience. So you don't have to work out, much of the kinks in 2022 and you can just kind of go into the season smoothly and have a system in place for him and not be trying to figure it out on the fly like they are this year, and then hopefully by playing him, they'll figure out what kind of personnel they need around him. And yeah, it's a tough situation, but I think they need to start Trey and they need to stick with him and they need to not question that. And there needs to be, no shifting at all. They need to pick Trey, let him do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Lance. I've been saying from the beginning of the season, I think Lance should be starting. Now, this week, I do think Jimmy Garoppolo will be starting because Lance obviously didn't practice today. And that's not a
Correct.
good sign, right? Because if Lance practiced this whole week, maybe there would be something, maybe that would be a different story. But he didn't practice today. So I think Jimmy is the starter for this Sunday night against the Colts. But if Lance is healthy and he's ready to go against the Bears, I think they should start him against the Bears. I would love to see a Lance versus Fields matchup. Okay, that would be like a dream matchup. Trey Lance versus Justin Fields. Fields. Some people said Fields was gonna be a Niner, and Lance got
Oh,
drafted.
yeah.
So it is gonna be an amazing game if those two if Lance does play. But Lance should be the starter. Like we're not either way. I don't care about making the playoffs this year because I don't expect us to make it to the Super Bowl. I rather us play Lance, even if we don't make the playoffs. Let him develop, let him get experience, let him get valuable reps, so that way he'll be more prepared for next season. Then let's say make the playoffs with Jimmy and then get eliminated in the first or second round. Like I could care less about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'd rather
Well,
have
and
Lance.
the point is that, next year Jimmy's not going to be on this team.
Yeah.
That seems to be guaranteed, all but, right? So, you know, like we've established already, the 49ers aren't Super Bowl contenders this year. So if you really care about this team winning a Super Bowl at some point, you want Trey to play. And that's how I feel. And I feel like that's how the organization should feel. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as that, right? And like we've talked about multiple times, I mean, if it was as simple as that, the 49ers would have found a way to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo or cut bait with him one way or the other because they
They
had the
could have cut him
options
before the
to.
season. They could have if they really
Yeah.
wanted to. The one thing I don't, that one thing that like makes me a little bit like, yo, They could have cut him before the season, but instead they keep him on the roster. And like they
Yeah.
didn't necessarily Kyle. We already heard like Kyle and Jimmy. They don't have the best relationship. And like legit, right before the draft, they tried to make a trade for Aaron Rodgers. They don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. They don't really necessarily want him. So I don't get what you think. Where like you're trying to make Jimmy Garoppolo be the starter. Like the only reason you traded for the third overall pick because you realized Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't reliable and you wanted someone new under center for the future. So like why are you playing Jimmy Garoppolo right now? And even before, like I said before drafted, they tried to get Aaron Rodgers. Kyle doesn't. We
Yeah.
know Kyle doesn't necessarily like
I
Jimmy
know.
Garoppolo under center.
I think the reason now that they're playing him and they continue to play him and try to start him is so that they can get some value out of him by the trade deadline or at the end of the season. Really, that's how I look at this situation. Is they're trying to. I think they see it as they see it like this. I mean that look, Lance isn't quite ready yet, and they don't want him to play yet. I think that's pretty obvious. And if you're in that position, then I completely understand where they're coming from with Jimmy. The problem is that Jimmy gets hurt, and that kind of disrupts that plan. So look, if they can time this out right and play this the right way, I can foresee a situation where Jimmy plays the next two games because Trey's hurt or Trey's very questionable against the Bears, and then they play Jimmy anyways, right? And they decide, okay, we'll start exactly. I see Kevin in the comments. The trade deadline is 3 days after that Chicago Bears game. Why not let Jimmy start these next two games and then ship him off to whatever team needs a starting quarterback? To me, that's how I would see the situation playing out best for the 49ers. And if it's not going to play out that way, they have to trade him in the offseason or cut him. They just have no other option. That is the last point of arrival for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, you just got to end it there if they haven't already. So, look, is it great that he's on this team now? No. Is it great that he's at this high of a cap number? No. But is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. And the 49ers are going to find ways to work around this, and I hope they do. Look, they haven't handled it the best, but I still think they can figure out a way to salvage this situation, and they just got to commit to something, right? Like we were talking about before, like I was saying at the beginning of this point, you got to commit to something and stick with it and have a plan. And right now, the 49ers have had none of that. And in this whole quarterback situation, even this season, seems like what is going on? What is the plan? Because it seems like there is no plan with Trey Lance in 2021. My point is, look, if it feels like there's a plan moving forward, look at the Chargers last season. Do you think Chargers fans really care about their win-loss record from last season? No, they care about the fact that Justin Herbert looked awesome, that they have a great team moving forward, and that they have a young, talented roster that they really believe in. That's the kind of thing that the 49ers could have by the end of the season. And look, I'm not saying that they need to go below 500. If you play,
right? If they play Lance. The thing about the trade deadline, I get it, the trade deadline is November 2nd. Thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out. But there's not that many teams that necessarily need a quarterback. The teams that needed a quarterback, they went out and got quarterbacks in free agency and in the draft. There's not that many teams that need quarterbacks. Like there's not there and like I mean the Niners. If the Niners I've heard rumors that teams offered the Niners fifth rounders and whatnot for Jimmy Garoppolo, and they didn't budge. They said, I remember in offseason they're like, we're only gonna trade Jimmy for a first rounder. Like if you're still stuck. If you're still thinking that if you're still stuck on I want a first rounder and you think the team's gonna give up a first rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo, even if he plays the next 2 weeks, no, nobody's gonna give up a first rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo. They're just not. With Jimmy Garoppolo's injury history, they're not gonna give up a first rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo. And it's not like when Jimmy Garoppolo plays, he throws 4 touchdowns and 300 yards per game and he's efficient and no, he's not. He's none of those things. Jimmy Garoppolo with his injury concerns and his injury history, if I was the owner of a team, I wouldn't do it. I think majority of the owners and GMs in the league wouldn't give up a first rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, and it would be stupid to do that. I just think trying to salvage anything they can out of him. And the idea for them, right, this whole offseason was like, and I don't agree with this, but this is how they thought. They thought that if they played Jimmy, like you were saying to me, they don't want that 4th, 5th round value out of him. They want that first round value. Now, they're not going to quite get that. But even if they don't get that, that doesn't mean they can't do better, right? If they can get a second or a third, I'm sure it would make the organization feel much, much better about, what went on.
Well, what's up, Benny? He said you see the Deshaun Watson news. No, I did not actually. I don't know what.
I mean, let's skip past this one. It's some internet rumors. Don't.
Uh,
There's some internet rumors with Deshaun right now about what team is trying to
traded to
trade
the
for him.
Dolphins or something like that.
Oh no, that's the rumor right now.
Really?
Yep.
Trade
So
to the
I don't know how
Dolphins.
much.
Trade to Brian Flores. Like I'm trading to a. We lost to the Jaguars. I'm trading to the
I mean,
Texans. But
I've seen the rumor that Deshaun Watson's getting traded like 7 or 8 different times now. So unless Adam Schefter tweets it out, I don't care.
yeah, and
Like,
Adam Schefter. Unless Adam Schefter tweets out anything, okay, it's not authentic, okay. Unless one of those like Adam Schefter's or Tom Peloseros of the world or Ian Rappaport's tweet it, we don't. Ben's like it's not authentic, okay, it's not authentic. But
not happening.
moving on to the next topic, will the 49ers re-sign Deebo Samuel?
I think so. Yeah, this one's pretty easy to me, and the fact that as long as Deebo Samuel doesn't get hurt at all before he's up for his next contract, absolutely sign him, no questions asked. It's just a matter of how much money they're going to be willing to sign him for, right? He's obviously not going to be, like a DeAndre Hopkins level paid wide receiver, but that doesn't mean he still shouldn't be like a 17, $18 million a year kind of guy right now. You look at the top of the league. Top of the league's at 27, 26 million APY for the best wide receivers. So for Deebo, that number should be about 10 million less, right? 15 to 17, maybe 18 million. And that's kind of where I'd be comfortable capping out at with him. I don't think it's going to be the same as the Buckner situation, right? But I could foresee that happening where, maybe the team is a little reluctant to give him that high of a number. And then Deebo wants, that higher number and they can't quite meet in the middle and they find another team who's willing to give up the right assets for him. They could trade him, but I just don't think that's what the 49ers want because Deebo has been the one wide receiver that they've been able to produce for this entire regime. Mm-hmm. They have to get it right. With Buckner, right, for example, I really think because he wasn't a part of the organization originally, the regime originally, they didn't have that same commitment that they might have to a guy like Deebo. And I think with Deebo, right, I understand the concern with him. I understand the concern with paying him long term and all the things that go along with it. But at some point, you're going to have to bet on your own guys. And they just they can't just keep going, drafting new guys and letting guys go. And if they were just gonna get rid of both Ayuk and Deebo again, to me, that would be a mistake. So you gotta work it out with one of these guys. It has to work with one of these guys. And then you got to sign him. And I think it's Deebo. And I don't have many reservations about that anymore. I think going into the season, you might have had some reservations, but now he's blown all of those out of the water completely. And obviously, look, this pace is crazy. I'm not saying he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's not. But he can be the best wide receiver for the 49ers. Sure. Yeah,
he's right now the best receiver for the 49ers.
Exactly.
My thing about paying Deebo Samuel, do I think the Niners will resign Deebo Samuel? Yes, I think the Niners will resign Deebo Samuel. Now, if he wants a high, big contract, I don't know about that, but if they come to an agreement and he's willing to, go settle for 10, 12, 15 million, 15, 17 million, I think that the Niners will resign Deebo Samuel. Now, do I think the Niners should resign Deebo Samuel? I do think the Niners should resign Deebo Samuel, but I agree with Korean 49er E. Kim that I would pay Deebo somewhere to $10 to $12 million because my biggest issue with Deebo Samuel is I get it, you got to bet on your own guys, right? But he has an injury history. Last year, missed the majority of the season. 2019, even his rookie season, he missed some games. I mean, and look at what happened when we signed George Kittle, right? We signed George Kittle and he got hurt, and he's getting paid how much? How much is his contract? $70 million, I think, something like that. So he's getting paid. I mean, the players that we have signed, like just based off like George Kittle, he has gotten hurt after we paid him that big contract. And Deebo, he has an injury history. So like my thing with Deebo Samuels, I don't care to pay him $20 million. I don't think we should pay him 20 million, 17, $18 million because if he does get hurt after signing that contract, then it's kind of like same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, same thing that happened to George Kittle, where you sign him to a huge contract, you expect something from him, and then at the end of the day, he can't even stay on the field because he's injured and he can't even play for you, right? So I don't think that the Niners should give him a big contract, but do I think they should re-sign him for the right price? Yes, I definitely do think so, and I think they will re-sign him for the right price.
Yeah, I just think if he is able to stay healthy between now and when he signs that contract, that's when I would have no reservations. Because quite honestly, I think you look at the type of injuries he was dealing with in the past and all the things he's been dealing with before. It's really ailments of his own body and the way he's treated his body. And now that he seems to have gotten his body in the right shape and is willing to put that time in and that effort in that the 49ers felt he wasn't putting in last season, like they documented. Um, Listen, if everything stays the same as it does, I would have zero reservations about paying him upwards of $15 million, even really, because I think what people don't realize is like by getting ahead of that money and paying him $15 million earlier when he's maybe not quite worth 15 million. By year 3 of that deal, when all the other NFL wide receivers are paid an average of like 13 million, you'll feel a lot better about that deal by then. So, a lot of these teams will have reservations about pulling off contracts or signing players to deals, but my thing is like, look, with these guys, with the way the NFL is going, if you accomplish this the right way, you can sign Debo and get him out of value, right? You just have to time it out right. And if they pay him before other receivers in the NFL get paid in the same draft class, it'll be a great contract for the 49ers. But if they wait too long, that APY is only going to go higher and higher and higher, and they're going to want more guarantees. So I think the sooner you get that contract, the better, in my opinion, because then you start having to compete with every other team in the NFL who's re-signing their star wide receiver, and Debo's going to be comparing himself to those guys. And quite honestly, I think Debo isn't really comparable to other number one wide receivers because he's so different and he has such a different role. So yeah, you got to get ahead of that deal, in my opinion. I do understand the reservations though, and I really love Debo, and they just got to be willing to invest in their own guys. That's the thing that they have to show is they keep talking about it. They keep talking about this family atmosphere, this family environment. Show it, because you guys have the opportunity to do it with a lot of great players who you've drafted, as you have the opportunity to extend, even good players, right? Just because you're not re-signing a player as the highest paid at a position doesn't mean that you didn't pull off a good draft pick. Even Mike McGlinchey, right? If you pull it off the right way, you get him to the right contract number, it's a great deal for the 49ers. But just because he's not the highest paid guy and he isn't the best at his position doesn't mean it's a loss for them whatsoever.
I don't want Michael Clinchy back. Okay, let's not talk about Michael Clinchy. Okay, I don't like Michael Clinchy. Okay, especially at the Arizona Cardinals game after he got thrown on his butt and kept holding J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones. Like, just no. I don't like Michael Clinchy out of that game. I didn't like Michael Clinchy from the beginning after he couldn't pass block. After we realized that he sucks at pass blocking. But I will say it would be a great contract if the Niners get him at the right price and if he can stay healthy, right? Because let's say we get him at the right price and then he gets injured the season after and he just can't stay on the field for us, then it's not necessarily the best contract. But if you get him at the right price and he can stay healthy for you, then and if he can stay healthy, then I definitely think that it is a good contract. Moving on to the next topic. We always talk about if Kyle Shanahan is a top 10 head coach. Is Kyle Shanahan a good head coach? But let's talk about John Lynch. Is
Yeah, let's
John
talk about
Lynch
him.
a top 10 GM?
No, it's not even close, actually. You sent me this, you asked me about this topic. I didn't even have to think about that for a second. There are very easily 10 GMs better than John Lynch. In fact, I'd be starting to question if he's a bottom 10 GM at this rate, because I really think you look at the 49ers personnel decisions, and that's kind of the problem I have with John Lynch and doing this regime the way they've done this regime, is that you can't place all the responsibility on one person, right? You talk about Adam Peters a little bit. You talk about Kyle Shanahan. Oh, John Lynch made that pick. The point is that there's confusion from the entire fan base about who's the GM and who's not. So I think because it's all over the place and not a single person is taking responsibility, so much, people are trying to get John Lynch fired for this pick, right? Or saying, oh, he did this. But in reality, like, do we know which draft picks John Lynch really made? Do we know what picks Kyle Shanahan made? Right now, there's a lot of confusion about who's to take responsibility for certain draft picks. And that's the issue right now with the 49ers. And I think if you're going to fire one person inside the regime, you got to fully clean house, in my opinion. You can't just fire John Lynch and bring in another GM, because you've already given Kyle Shanahan so much power that if you try to bring in someone else, I'm sorry, that situation would not go over well. And I think, if they were just going to fire John and then, let's say, bring up Adam Peters and call him your next GM, well, you're only giving Kyle more personnel power in that spot. So to me, is John Lynch a top GM? No, but I don't think the 49ers can fire him either, because I think they're stuck with him. And they just have to ride it out with this regime, because John Lynch's job as the general manager of the 49ers is not the same job that Les Snead or the general manager in Baltimore or the general manager in Kansas City have. It's a very different job. So I think, look, is John Lynch one of the best GMs or a top GM? No, but he doesn't have to be either. And the responsibility goes to other people. And we can't blame John for all these draft picks, because quite honestly, you have two other people who could potentially be responsible for those draft picks. Like, usually in organizations, right, the GM is responsible for the draft. That's their baby, right? With John Lynch, what can we be sure of in terms of which draft pick is his and which draft pick isn't? So
which
I
draft
think
pick is Kyle Shanahan's, which draft pick is Adam Peters. Like,
it's too hard to evaluate what's going on here. I mean, and they really do have so much mixed messaging that I think they're intentionally trying to confuse us. And because you can't pin one person down, you can't fire one person, right? If you want to fire one person, you got to fire them all. So maybe it's just a situation where John Lynch, by not taking responsibility or not taking all of it, right, is keeping his job, because look, they can't blame it all on him. So I just think this GM situation is really weird for the 49ers. They're just kind of stuck with what they're stuck with now. And you got to ride it out with Kyle, because he is making so many of the personnel decisions. I just think they need to find someone else who will have a different voice in there. And I think that would be too tough to pull off right now, unfortunately. Even if you were going to fire John, bringing someone in to try and just replace John and be a general manager would be too difficult, because of everything that's already happened with Kyle. So I just don't know if it's realistic to fire John without firing Kyle, and not even Kyle. I mean, I'm talking about everyone. Adam Peters, Parag, just fire everyone if we're firing one per.
Parag. Okay,
I'm
Parag.
sorry. I'm sorry. People love Parag. I mean, I'm really not that impressed by the stuff he does. Listen, up until 2019, it was great. They built a great team. Since then, it's been a dumpster fire, in my opinion, with some of the decisions they've made. I mean, you talked about the George Kittle contract, right? I'm not going to rag on that one as much, but I mean, look at what they did through two off seasons in terms of money wise. They've only gotten worse, because they used to be a savvy team in 2019, right? That got contracts the right way and built a team the right way. Well, to me, that was 1 year, and I don't know if that year's ever going to happen again. And I think it was the right perfect storm for the 49ers. And like E. Kim says, I don't know what Parag does for this franchise necessarily. I know he structures the contracts, but if he is structuring the contracts, then he shouldn't be, because the people at the top of the organization aren't willing to pull off those contracts, like with the Jimmy Garoppolo scenario. So I just think, like I was just getting back to it with John Lynch, it's super hard to evaluate this guy. I just don't know if you can definitively say one way or the other if he's, this good at this, or this great at that, or this horrible at this, or this bad at that. Like, we just don't know who's making decisions inside the building right now, and it's really confusing. And that's only how it's going to stay. So you just got to ride it out. Even if you want one fired, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to let them all go. It can't pick and choose with this. You got a completely clean house if someone's gonna go.
Here's my problem with letting them all go, is that Jed York, I don't trust him to bring in a good head coach. Really, I don't. Because Kyle, I don't trust. I have zero faith in Jed York of him bringing in a good replacement for Kyle and John Lynch. If we clean house, I just don't have. I have zero faith in.
Well, and here's the one thing with that is that Jed might not get another chance to hire another regime, right? Because I know people kind of know this, but Jed really doesn't actually own the 49ers. His parents do. His mom does, right? If his mom decides that Jed shouldn't be doing this anymore because he's already gotten enough opportunities, which is what it seems like and what it's been lately reported as, then I'm all for this situation. Just burn it all down.
Well, 49er Minded, he agrees with you. If you haven't already, go check out 49er Minded's channel. He's a great 49ers YouTube content creator. He's had a former player on his channel, Jamie Winborn. He's had so many amazing guests on his channel. So if you haven't already, go check out his channel. He's a legend.
For
I
sure.
love his theme song because it's 49er minded. But I mean, John Lynch isn't a top 10 GM. There's a bunch. He's just not. If you just look at all his like draft picks, whether it was made by Kyle, whether even some of the ones that he probably might have made, they're really not that good. The only one, there's some good ones, right? Like George Kittle, Fred Warner. But even then, we don't even know if John Lynch was the one who actually drafted those guys. It could have been Adam Peters. It could have been Kyle Shanahan. So we necessarily don't know. But I don't think John Lynch is a top 10 GM. There's a lot of great GMs. For example, Les Snead, Steve Keim. There's a bunch of great GMs in the league. I don't think John Lynch is among them. I don't think John Lynch is a top 10 GM. It's simple for me. I don't think he's a top 10 GM.
No. No, he isn't.
Yep. Well, getting into the last topic, do you think the 49ers can still make the playoffs?
I think on paper, no. Let me get there first. I think if this was a normal season, right, whatever, I would say absolutely not that the 49ers shouldn't make the playoffs. Could they? Yeah, but probably not, and not likely. Probably less than a 20 or 15% chance. But I will say this, given the rest of the 49ers schedule, I think that bumps up their odds significantly, in my opinion, right? And then obviously you look at what's happening with Seattle right now. That's one less threat to them. So I think they'll have a really good opportunity. And quite honestly, I'm kind of 50-50 right now. I think it's a coin flip for the 49ers whether or not they make the playoffs. And I've kind of stayed consistent with this all season, that I feel like they're just going to be one of those teams that's quote unquote in the hunt at the end of the season, right? It's going to come down to week 17 or week 18. And I'm not saying they're going to be one of the last teams in, like the last of the last, but I think they're going to be one of those teams that specific scenarios have to happen and then they'll get into the playoffs, right? One team has to lose in week 17. One team has to lose week 18, whatever it is. So I just feel like they'll be one of those teams that is right in the thick of it at the end of things. But even if they don't make it, that's okay. If they're like eighth, right, and they just miss out on playoffs, that's fine, in my opinion. You just need to get that positive momentum going with Trey Lance, like we talked about earlier. But we already covered all that with the quarterback. So can they make the playoffs? I absolutely think so. I think they have the schedule to do it. And I could very well see them making the playoffs, and I could very well see them missing the playoffs. You
want to talk about
playoffs.
Playoffs.
I just want to win one regular season game. Like, nah, that's not where the 49ers are right now, right? But
they're not that bad. But
it's a coin flip for me, 50-50. They can make the playoffs, absolutely. But Amin, and I think you'll agree with me on this, they have a lot of games they'll absolutely blow out teams, right? Like the Texans or the Falcons.
Bengals, Texans,
Jaguars. But I was gonna say teams like I think the Bengals are better than you give them credit for. But teams like the Bengals,
I still think the Niners, with the way the Niners defense is playing right now, the Niners defense can continue at the pace that it is, and hopefully by then the offense will pick it up, and the offense can score more points. And I definitely do think we have a chance.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, I mean, is I think if you look at teams like the Bengals, the Bears, the Colts, that you would have been much, much more confident about, and in fact, like they should beat those teams. Those games aren't quite so easy to me anymore.
Those could go either way, to be honest. Legit, right before the season, I was like, the Niners might go like 12-5, 13-4, whatever. Like I was confident, right? But then after
but now they have two. But now you see they're down a peg from where you expected them to be, right?
Yeah, I expected them to beat the Packers on Sunday night. They did it, right? 37 seconds. Like some of those games, I'm like, okay, even Seattle, right? I was like, okay, we might get this one at home, and then we might split with them, later on the season.
Well, it's and like we're saying with teams like the Colts, the Bears, the Bengals, they're teams they can beat. They probably should beat, but quite honestly, the further we've gotten to the season, I think those games are less of a gimme than we thought they really were. And I think we got to give those teams more credit than we are right now, because I think there are only so many guaranteed wins on the 49ers schedule. That's what I was trying to say, is that there are a few games like the Falcons, the Texans, that the 49ers should no question win. They're a better football team. But there are a lot of games where the 49ers, they're the better football team, but the margin for error is so thin that 49ers could very easily lose every single one of those games, and they could very easily win every single one of those games. I just don't think it's easy to predict one way or the other. And the only three teams who I feel like should be walk in the park for the 49ers should be the Jaguars, the Texans, and the Falcons. Besides those three teams,
And
I don't think
I
there's
was about to say
any
the
easy.
Bengals. I was about to say the Bengals. But then I
Bengals
also
are
like
4-2, man. They're
the
looking
Bengals.
good.
Here's the
Jamar,
thing I will say about the Bengals. I'm not as scared playing the Bengals because of what I saw them play against the Bears. Because we saw
right.
when you got pressure against Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow necessarily did. He threw like 3 interceptions. He didn't do.
Yep.
He didn't, against obviously against the Lions. He played amazing. But at the end of the day, they're the 0-6 Lions coming into that game. They're the 0-5 Lions. But there are some games I definitely do think they should win, like against the Texans, against the Jaguars. But some of these games, majority of fans expect us to win. We should win it, right? But will we win it? We have the potential to win it, but we might also lose it. But I think the Niners do have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they
For
can.
sure.
Just the only reason I'm saying that's because of the schedule, right? If the offense can pick it up, and just based off the schedule, let's say we go and beat the Colts this week at home. We go and beat the Colts. We beat the Bears. And even if we lose to the Cardinals, if we can at least split the divisional games, we could beat the Cardinals, if we can at least split the divisional games and,
Yeah.
get the wins that we should get, like the Jaguars and against the Vikings, it could go either way. But if we can get the wins that I think that we should win, and majority of the Niners fans think that we should be able to win, right? Like against the Rams, like I'm not gonna say we're favored against them because we're not. But against the Vikings, it's 50-50. So it could be some people say that we're favored, some people are the Vikings favored. So if it's sometimes one of those type of games, I think the Niners should win them. Where if they don't, then it's like okay, it's not great. That doesn't help our playoff chances. But the games that I do think that they should win, I think they have a shot of winning them. And if they do get it done, I definitely think the Niners can make the playoffs. And especially because now they're 17th. It's not just 16th. So the Rams, if they can, I think the Cardinals, just based off right now, the Cardinals obviously win the division. Seattle, they have their injury. So the other potential playoff teams are obviously the Rams. They're probably going to be a wild card team if they don't win the division. Then the Niners and the Vikings, those two teams could also get playoff spots. So I legitimately think the Niners can. I don't think they're winning the division, but I definitely do think the Niners have a legit
Oh
shot
yeah.
of making it to the wild card because of their schedule.
No question about that. I think they certainly have the opportunity to, but like we said, I don't think it's easy by any means either. It really could come down to one of those things. And on this NBA space, yeah, I wasn't hosting that or anything. That was on a big content creator, Worldwide Wob. I just popped in his space. He let me talk for a little bit. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I wasn't hosting that or anything. Sorry.
Well, that basically wraps up our show. I appreciate you
Yes, it
joining me,
does.
Ben. I really do.
Of course.
This Fourth and
Uh,
Gold Niners show, weekly Niners show that I have on the channel. If you haven't already, go check out Ben's channel. The link is in the
oh yeah.
description. Go subscribe to
Appreciate
Ben's
it.
channel. If you haven't followed Ben on Twitter, go do that as well. The link is all in the
Follow me on
description. And if you're
Twitter.
not subscribed to my
Twitter is
channel,
right here.
yeah, Twitter's right there. And if you haven't subbed to my channel, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm already up to 500, but now the goal is to
Well,
1K.
and get those likes up, everyone, on this
Hit
video.
the
We
likes
want to
up.
make sure you
Hit the
guys are
like button.
watching. We want to get that active engagement from our audience.
Yeah, but I appreciate everybody who was in the chat. Korean 49, I appreciate you were sticking with us through the whole stream, so I really appreciate it. 49er minded. If you haven't checked out his channel, please go do so. But I appreciate everybody
Absolutely.
who was watching, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.